Alright, now question 11 says that the diagram shows demand and supply curves for the global air cargo market. The initial equilibrium is at point X. What would the new equilibrium be if there is a global recession and an increase in fuel costs? So at first it says that the initial equilibrium is here at X. And so if there is a global recession, as a recession is where there is a decline in economic activity, that means that production will fall, output will fall, so GDP will also fall. And if GDP falls, then there will be less demand for labor because labor is derived demand. If less things are being produced, then less labor is needed to produce. So that means that employment will also fall. If employment falls, less people are receiving incomes. That means incomes will fall. If incomes fall, then purchasing power falls, then consumption also falls. So as consumption falls, that means that the demand for goods will generally decrease because you just have less purchasing power, right? So essentially, a global recession will lead to a decrease in demand. Now, the second piece of information says, what will happen if there is an increase in fuel cost? So fuel costs can be seen as a cost of production because, if you produce a good, maybe your machines may need to use fuel. Or more commonly, fuel is used as a transport cost. Well, let's just write that. Because if you're going to transport goods from one place to another, you will need fuel one way or another. So this is part of the production process though. So it also can count as a cost of production as a larger umbrella. But if there is an increase in fuel cost, that means that the cost of production will increase. If the cost of production increases, it's become more expensive to increase supply. So that will discourage producers from increasing their supply. So that means that the is likely to fall because producers are not that incentivized or motivated because they will get less profit if they produce this because the cost is so high. So this piece of information basically tells us that supply will fall. So now we know that demand will fall and supply will fall, so that means that the demand curve will shift to the left and supply curve will also shift to the left. Because if there is a fall or a decrease in either supply or demand, the curves will shift to the left, whereas if there is an increase, it will shift to the right. So now we're looking for left shifts. So this is the equilibrium point, right? So this is the original, this is the original demand curve, and this is the original supply curve. So we know that they need to shift to the left. So since this is the original demand curve, it will shift to the left. So this is our new demand curve. We'll just write N here. And now as for the supply curve, since it will decrease, it will also shift to the left. So this will also be our new supply curve. So this is our new equilibrium point. So D is our answer, and that is correct. Number 12 says, a government gives free food to poor households in a community. What is this food an example of? So let's just look at the options first. Now the first one says that this is an example of a free good. The government gives free food, so it's free, so therefore it must be a free good. No, that's not how it works. Because the definition of a free good in economic terms is that to produce this good, there is no opportunity cost. So what it basically means that since an opportunity cost is the next best thing given up, to produce a free good, you do not need to give anything up because it is literally available in the world naturally for free. So for example, air is a free good because you do not need to give up anything to produce air. It is just there, it exists. And water is also a free good, arguably, if it's not purified or processed in any way, because it is available in rivers and streams. So that's just there. You can just grab it without needing to give up anything at all. So that is what a free good is. So is free food, is food itself a free good? Well, to produce food, you do face opportunity costs because you need the factors of production to process this food, to cook the food, to process it in any way you need. It does have an opportunity cost, so that is not a free good. The opposite of a free good, however, is a private good, and that is a good that faces opportunity costs to be produced. So food is not a free good, it's a private good. So this is not correct, so we're just going to cross that off and check the next one. Now the next one says a public good. So what are public goods? Public goods have two common characteristics, which are that they are non-rivalrous and that they are non-excludable. Now this means, well, non-rivalrous means that the consumption of the good does not diminish its use for another consumer. So for example, if I have a piece of chocolate, this will be rivalrous, not non-rivalrous. If I have a piece of chocolate and I eat the piece of chocolate, so there's only the wrapper left, and I give it to another consumer or another person, they will only have the wrapper. There will be no chocolate left to eat because I've already eaten it and it's in my stomach. So this means that I have decreased the use or the consumption of the chocolate, so another person can no longer consume it. So that is a rival good or rivalrous good. However, if it is non-rival, then that means that the use of the good cannot be used up. Now the second one, non-excludable, means that you cannot stop a consumer from consuming it. So for example, let's go back to the chocolate. So let's say a chocolate costs $5, and so I bought the chocolate for $5. However, someone else who does not have $5 cannot buy the chocolate, so they're excluded from accessing the chocolate because they do not have the money to buy it. So in this case, a public good will be non-excludable, meaning that you cannot stop a person from consuming it. So a classic example of a public good are streetlights, because, well, streetlights are little lamps on the side of the road that give you light at night. I can use the light of the street light to see the path ahead. However, me using that light does not decrease or diminish its use for another person passing by. So that makes it non-rivalrous because I do not use up its use for another person. However, and also it is non-excludable because how do you stop someone from using light? So you can't really exactly stop someone specific from using light. So you can't stop them from consuming it. So that's why streetlights are a public good. These are the characteristics of a public good. So is food a public good? Well, does food match up with these characteristics? If I eat the food, well, another person can no longer eat it because it'll be in my stomach, so it doesn't exist. So I can decrease its use for another consumer, so it is not non-rivalrous, it will be rivalrous instead. Alright, is this also non-excludable? Well, technically, since it's free, it is not restricted by any means of payment or prices, so you can say that it is non-excludable, meaning you are not excluding anyone. However, if you want to argue, you can say that the government is only giving this free food to poor households. We're not very certain if it doesn't give it to other households who are not poor. So you can say that governments have excluded them like that. However, as it is already not non-rivalrous, since it definitely doesn't match up with this characteristic, and it's not non-excludable either. So food is both rivalrous and excludable, arguably. So let's just cross that off because that'd be a more certain answer. Now the next one says a demerit good. Well, what are demerit goods? Well, demerit goods are goods that are more harmful than consumers realize. So however, is food in any way a demerit good? Food can be classified as a merit good, which is the opposite of a demerit good, meaning that it gives benefits that are beneficial than consumers realize. So as food doesn't really cause any external costs, it is healthy, it's good for your health, and it's good for your life. So it's not necessarily a demerit good, so let's just cross that off. Better examples of demerit goods would be cigarettes, tobacco, alcohol, as they are not very good for your health. But anyways, the next one says a normal good. A normal good is also similar to a private good. If we talk about income elasticity of demand, also known as YED, whatever the value or the coefficient it is, if the sign of it is positive, then it will be a normal good, because that indicates that the relationship between quantity demanded and income is positive. Meaning if income increases, then the quantity demanded for that good will also increase. but it is also a private good because it faces an opportunity cost when produced. So is that true? Yes, if you produce food, then you will face an opportunity cost. And also, food is a type of good that if your income increases, you will want to buy more of it as well. So that makes sense. So, well, this makes sense out of all the options. So for number 12, our option is D, and that is correct. So now number 13. Let's just erase this. It says, a government wishes to raise the incomes of farmers without raising the price of food to consumers. Which policy should it use? So let's just look at the options first. The first one says a maximum price below the market price for food. So what is a maximum price? Well, we can draw that on a demand and supply curve. So let's just do that really quickly. Downwards is D, upwards is S. So this is the demand curve, supply curve, price, and quantity demanded or quantity supplied. And this is our equilibrium point right here. So maximum price is a price ceiling, meaning that the prices cannot rise above that price. And it says that this maximum price is set below the market price, which is also equivalent to the equilibrium price. Since it is below it, that means that the maximum price will be down here. So we can write that as the maximum price. Now, as the maximum price is the price ceiling, that means that this is as high as the prices can go. So the prices will start increasing like here, and it will stop here. So let's see if this matches up with what the question has said. So the question has asked us to raise the incomes of farmers. So we want this to increase, and we do not want the price of food to increase. So does this policy check out? Well, since this is the demand and supply diagram of food, let's just put that up here. And now the price of food has now been maximized. Oh, well, the maximum price of food is now here. So this is the highest as it will go. So does it raise the price of food? Well, since the equilibrium price is, we assume that will be the current price otherwise. Has the price of food risen? Has it gone above this point? No. So yes, this one checks out. However, does it raise the incomes of farmers? Well, now here we have to look at the graph more closely, because if you look at the graph, well, you'll notice that the quantity supplied and the quantity demand are no longer equal because they are not at the equilibrium point. So since they're no longer equal, the quantity supplied is here and the quantity demanded is here. So quantity supplied is less than quantity demanded. So in that case, we call it a shortage because there is excess demand. Because, well, as prices have fallen, food has become more cheaper. So consumers are more attracted to buying more food. So the quantity demanded increases compared to the equilibrium quantity demanded. So it increases. However, as the price has fallen, farmers will be earning less for each unit of food that they supply. So they are less motivated or incentivized to supply. So their quantity supply decreases because they are not going to get as much revenue as they used to compared to at the equilibrium quantity. So in that case, since quantity supplied is only supplied to this much, to this line right here, and well, quantity demanded is right here. However, you can't demand or you can't buy more than what is supplied in the economy. So whatever that is bought or demanded will have to stop at this point. So this point will not hold because this area is not supplied. So therefore, since only until this point of which is what is quantity supplied will be sold, the sale revenue, or also known as income, will only be up till here. But the original quantity supplied was up until the equilibrium quantity. So it was much greater than after the maximum price is placed, which is here. So not much food will be sold because not as much food is supplied anymore. So does this policy raise the incomes of farmers? Well, no, it even decreases it because less is supplied, so less is sold. So that cannot be our option. So we'll just cross that off and look at the next one. Just erase this real quick so we can make space. So now the second option says a minimum price below the market price for food. Well, I should have kept that graph. I'll be right back. Right, so here is our new demand and supply diagram for food again, and of course here is our equilibrium point. And this is our equilibrium price again, also known as the market price. And now we place a minimum price below the market price. So we're just going to put the minimum price below the market, oh, where's my straight line? Below the market price, and so this will be the minimum price. Now the minimum price is the price floor, so this is where the prices start increasing from. The maximum price is the point where prices stop increasing. However, the minimum price is where the prices can start increasing from. Okay, so think about it. This minimum price is actually redundant because since prices can start increasing from this point and your original price is at the equilibrium price right here, well, the price will not actually change. It will just stay right here because you can start increasing from here. So why will you price it at the minimum price when your original price works out? Whereas if the minimum price, hypothetically, were placed above, oh, where's my straight line? Above the equilibrium price, then the prices will have to start increasing from here. So you cannot stay at your equilibrium price. You will have to move up to at least this price at the minimum price or above. But really, that just means if your minimum price is below your equilibrium price or your market price, it is ineffective. It doesn't really change anything. Your equilibrium price will stay right where it is, and your equilibrium quantity will just stay right where it is, and the demand curve will not change. We won't have our surpluses or shortages at all. So, all right, let's check it out with the question, what the question has asked for. So, does it raise the incomes of farmers? Well, it doesn't change anything. I don't think it increases or decreases the incomes at all because the sales doesn't change at all. It's the same. It doesn't move at all. All right. So does it raise the price of food? Well, no. It's the same price. It doesn't change at all. Nothing happens. So this is essentially just redundant. So we'll just cross that off because nothing actually changes or happens. So the third option says a payment of a subsidy to farmers to produce food. I have to draw a new diagram, hold on. Right, here is a brand new diagram for food again, and it says that there is a payment of a subsidy to farmers to produce food. So what is a subsidy? A subsidy is a grant usually given by the government to producers to reduce their cost of production. So the cost of production is always associated with the supply curve because it becomes less expensive to produce, right? So if you get a subsidy, then your cost of production reduces. That means that you will produce more. It's become more cheaper to produce. So the supply curve will shift to the right because supply increases because you want to supply more. So if that happens, then our equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity changes. So here is the original equilibrium point, and here is the original equilibrium price and equilibrium. Right, this is supposed to be QE, and then the new equilibrium is at this point, let's just say E1. So now we have the new price, the new equilibrium price, and the new equilibrium quantity. So what do you notice? Well, the original price was here and it has decreased, and the original quantity was here and it has increased. So does that check out with what the question is asking for? Well, it asks, does it increase the incomes of farmers? Well, the equilibrium point is where the quantity supplied is equal to the quantity demanded. So well, this is basically, okay, the value right here, it can also be considered as the quantity supplied. So the quantity supplied and the equilibrium quantity has increased. So the number of things or the number of units of food being sold has increased. So that can increase the incomes of the farmers. Although this may be dependent on the elasticity of the demand curve, the sales or the total revenue is still likely to increase because the quantity that you supply increases, so the amount you sell increases. So you know what? The incomes of the farmers are likely to increase, yes. So now the second point says, does the price of food increase? We don't want the price of food to increase. Well, the price of food has decreased even, so the price of food does not become raised or does not increase. So yeah, that also checks out. So this is a possible answer. Let's just keep that in mind and check the last option. Just erase this. I don't think I need to draw another diagram. A release of government food stocks onto the market. Well, government food stocks are usually used in usually used in the context of buffer stock schemes, but I'll just do a separate video on that because that's not that related. But we can also, well, it is basically recognizing that the government increases, or well, the government releases food stocks onto the market, right? That just basically means the government adds more supply into the market. Right, here is a demand and supply diagram again for food, and this is our equilibrium point right here. So if the government releases more stocks onto the market, that's basically releasing more supply into the market. So that means that the supply curve will shift to the right because supply has increased. So this is the new supply curve. This is kind of looking like the same deal with subsidies. However, you have to keep in mind that this stock is provided by the government, not by the farmers. So the farmers are only supplied up till here. So whatever the stocks that are sold or released from this new supply curve is not from the farmers. So the farmers do not get the income of that. So anyway, let's just pinpoint our new equilibrium price, which is right here. Our old one is right here, and our old equilibrium quantity is here. So the new equilibrium point is here. So the price has decreased, just like the subsidies, and the equilibrium quantity has increased, right? So let's check with the question again, and it says, does it raise the income of farmers? Well, like I was saying just now, the farmers can only supply up till this point, the supply that has increased is not from the farmers. So whatever revenue that is earned by the quantity supplied in this part does not go to the farmers. And also, the price decreases. So the farmers will only be able to supply up till this point, this quantity supplied, because the price is here. And this is where the price intersects with the supply curve. Because as price decreases, the less incentivized or motivated the suppliers become. So the farmers are less motivated to supply more. So since the price decreases, the quantity supplied decreases. So no, it doesn't exactly raise the income of the farmers because they also sell less. And well, although the new quantity equilibrium is right here, this is not from the supply from farmers. This is the supply from the government. So the income of farmers does not increase. It might even decrease by the looks of it. So this does not check out. However, without raising the price of food, does it raise the price of food? No, it doesn't. It even falls. So although this checks out, the income of farmers do not increase. So that can be it. Let's cross it out. So our only option left is option C, and that is correct. Now moving on to question 14, which says governments in market economies give different reasons for intervening in the operation of an economy. What reason gives a normative statement? So what is a normative statement? A normative statement is a statement with value judgment. And value judgment basically means opinion. The opposite of a normative statement is a positive statement, which does not contain any opinions or value judgments. They are basically the same as opinions. Value judgment or opinion, and they are usually supported by evidence or data or facts, classified as positive or normative statements. Now the first one says average incomes have failed to keep pace with prices rising during the past year. Now this just seems like a solid fact, with no opinions included in it. So we're just going to consider that as a positive statement and go to the next one. Energy prices have increased by more than 50% during the past year. Now most of the time, if the statement contains a number or data, then it is likely a positive statement. So this also does not contain any opinion or suggestions or subjective meaning behind it. So this is also likely to be a positive statement. The next one says, the distribution of incomes has become more unfair during the past year. So the keyword unfair, because to what extent, when do you think something is unfair? How large of a gap? The gap between the rich and the poor, of course. So some people perfectly equal, so there will always be some sort of gap between it. So if there is always this gap, do you still call it unfair, or is it until a certain length of that gap when do you call it unfair? So that seems like an opinion that is not factual or solid. But let's just check our other options just in case. So normative. And the last one says, the poorest 10% of households have suffered the greatest fall in average real income during the past year. Seems like a fact, nothing uncertain, or this is likely to be a positive statement as well. So as the question has asked us, which reason given is a normative statement? C is our only normative statement, so that will be our option. That's correct. So number 15, illustrates macroeconomic data for an economy. All figures are in dollar billions. What is the equilibrium real output? So the equilibrium real output is equal to GDP, which is also equal to aggregate demand. So why is that? Well, on an aggregate demand and aggregate supply curve, which will look like this, with AD down here and AS up here, and this is price level, and this is real GDP or output, right? The intersection or the equilibrium point right here is output, or also known as the equilibrium real output. So which is why it equals to GDP, which is also equal to aggregate demand. That's correct. Or which one is the real equilibrium real output? So in this case, we know that aggregate demand, the components of aggregate demand include consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports, which is sum of all of this together will equal to, of course, AD, which is equal to aggregate demand, which is also the equilibrium real output. So we've been given the values of all the components and the real output. So you would just consumption plus investment plus government expenditure plus net exports, which is exports minus imports, should equal to this. Just find the values of the sum of this equaling to the actual real output. So the way we would calculate it is 110 plus 100 plus 50 plus 10 minus 20. That is equal to, let's just do that. So the sum of this thing is equal to 250. Now let's check option B, which is 120 plus 100 plus 60 plus 20 minus 30, which is 270. Option C is 140 plus 100 plus 70 plus 30 minus 40, which is 300. And option D is 160 plus 100 plus 80 plus 40 plus, minus 50. That is 330. So now that we have each of these values, just match them up to the real output given. So for if you look at it right here, option C, this is 300, this is 300 as well, that equals together. So this data set is correct. So that will be our option, and that's correct. Now number 16, I'm just going to erase this part.